Recording this episode, it felt like this is why I started the podcast. This is the reason. This is the sort of conversation. This is the sort of people that I wanted to meet and speak to and spread messages about. Recording this episode was a spiritual experience for me because it was with my mentor, Pauly Ting. And there was a time about 2 years back when I first met him. The guy seemed so intense, just so intense. And I remember having, I think, 90-minute or a 2-hour conversation with him and just going back with a headache because my brain could not process all the stuff that we had spoken about. And I think as I grew emotionally and as I matured, it feels like I have caught up to him in some way. Not there yet, but somehow. And it was an honor for me when he accepted to take me on as his, what do you call that, guidee, as his friend, as someone who he guides and who he invests his energy, his beautiful brain and his soul into. And working with him made me realize that everything that we are doing here, everything, our business, our life, our being, everything is about love. It's about falling deeply in love with all aspects of ourselves, which sort of mirrors to the outside world, which it's like the source of our passion. It's the source of our passion for us wanting to make a change in the world and to create an impact before we ultimately die. Too philosophical, probably, because this is going to be a philosophical as fuck conversation.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, Pauly. First of all, because of my relationship with you, I never once considered that you would say no. And I was like, yes, it's Pauly. I'm just going to invite him. And we're just going to have a fun conversation. Thank you so much.
You're
Anyways,
more than welcome. You're more
for
than welcome.
accepting.
Look, how do I say no to someone who's up for doing what you're up for in the world?
That means a lot. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get into introductions and stuff, okay, I actually wanted to share why I wanted to do this podcast with you. Okay.
Okay.
Out of all the people that I know, believe it or not, you're the one who truly stands up for what love is and understands it and imbibes it. I don't know what other, like, you actually take it inside you and it shows up in how you are and the way you are. Okay. And working with you, I think a couple of months ago was, I wouldn't say the final step, but it was the last step of one of the major phases of my healing journey. Okay. And just after I finished working with you, I had a conversation with a third generation Chinese shaman. And I think like all the work that we had done together was building up to that moment. And she spoke to me about money trauma and generational trauma. And remember how much we used to talk about my money trauma and stuff like that? It just went off in one meditation. Like I had died and reborn in a span of 20 minutes. Okay.
Yep.
And it was mind-boggling. It was mind-blowing. And it was only after that, after a few weeks, that because my body took time to get used to it, to get used to the new version of me, that I realized everything that I had done from 5th grade until that moment subconsciously was because of my money trauma. it was because of it. And that is what had driven me so much. Yes, I wanted to create an impact in the world. Yes, I wanted to help people. Yes, I wanted to be there for them in whatever way possible. But at the end of the day, it was that money that was driving me. Okay. And at the same time, I came to the realization that all the healing work that I do, yes, it helps people build really great businesses. But at the end of the day, what it does is take them towards love. That's what it does. Again, one of the conversations that we have had so many times, that it takes them towards loving all parts of themselves without any judgment, just pure love, and leads them to, because the inner world is a mirror of the outer world, it leads them to just purely love others without any ego, which I don't think people actually, if until you come to this end of the spectrum, they don't realize how much it transforms you and your soul and everything around you, your relationships, your business, everything. And ever since I have gotten over, as far as I know, the traumas that were pushing me to keep going, and I spent a good couple months in between, about a month or two, to it took me time to adjust, because now I didn't know what inspires me anymore. It was like this nimble phase, because that had led me to everything that I did for so long that now I didn't know what to do without it. And that's when I went back to our conversations. And there was another incident that happened in Tiruvannamalai, which, yeah. And that sort of, again, led everything to the precipice that this is what forms the foundation of my business. Love is what forms the foundation of my business, of what I do, of why I want to do everything. And when I was talking to you 2 days back, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I haven't called him in yet. And then I realized that I had to be at this stage to call you in. And it just boggled my mind.
Here I am.
Yeah, thank you. And I still get goosebumps. So, that being out of the way, for those of the people who are listening to the podcast and who don't know you, how would you like to introduce yourself?
That's a big question.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it.
I thank you for putting me on the spot. Who am I? Who aren't I? I am you. I am the version of you who's chosen to love himself. And loving myself has been the hardest thing I've ever done. The hardest thing. And I've gone on this journey to reconnect myself with love so that I can help reconnect others with love. To recognize that everyone is just me, and I'm them, and I am them. And as you go out into the world trying to influence and help others, it always starts with you. It always ends with you. So who am I? I have played many characters, and I have achieved things, and I have done things, and I own things, but as I move beyond that realm of defining myself by my stuff or my achievements or my career path, or when I go out into the world now and I think about who I am, I just choose to be the embodiment of love. I had this meditation, and I was contemplating this just before my birthday, and I found that most of my life had been spent in my intellect and in my external world and the validation. And there was just this really strong signal to it was time to let that go. It's time to get back into my intuition. And this idea of, even if you think mind, body, soul, that the majority of you doesn't speak a language that you communicate with. It's a garbled language. It's not English. It's not Hindi. That's the brain. That's the brain. And this message came through to me. And as I was kind of in the perpetual human experience of trying to work out who am I and why am I here, what came to me was it's up to me to, or I can choose to just sit with people in the mess they've made and love them when they hate themselves the most. That's it. And as I wake up every day and I help people such as yourself, it's just to remind you of who you, the whole of you is, not just your ego, but the whole of you. And the whole of you is love. And I help remind you when you forget. And that's it. And we forget a lot. I forget. And I have people in my life who help me remember, including you. And that's all we are for each other. When we think about serving each other, it's to remind each other of who we fully are, not who we've become, not who we think we need to be, not who people say we have to be, like not all the obligations and the titles and the labels that are given to us. And so it's this idea of when you think of mind, body, soul, most people understand the mind. Oh, yep, that's where my thoughts live. And the body is almost this sort of like annoying thing you've got to deal with. Like, I've got to brush your teeth, I've got to feed you, I've got to, oh my God, okay, stupid body. And the soul is this weird thing that's for woo-woo people, that's awful, it's out there and doesn't make any sense. And as I really thought about it, it's funny because in that context, it's like a top-down approach. It starts with the mind and then it goes through the body and then, I don't know, something soul, right? I don't know, live right and then you go to heaven or hell, that kind of mentality. And I really got present to that it's actually the other way. And that the soul is just nothing more than our connection to love. And if you think of it as like a Wi-Fi connection or a plug in a power outlet, it's what's the quality of that connection? And the quality of that connection will probably govern your experience of life. And so as you have a strong connection to love, the body is there for nothing more than to experience the feeling of love and the absence of it and all the and the judgment that comes. And then the mind is there to try to debate and articulate and understand in order to recommunicate with the self and with others love. So we can use our mind to communicate hate, which is actually a derivative of love. So it's also love. We can choose to use our mind and our body to deepen the disconnection, or we can use it to reconnect. And so maybe that's a long answer to your question, but when I think about who I am nowadays, it's not really in this world of what I own and what I've done and my nationality and my gender and all those things that people I find put a lot of value into. I think more about who I'm being in the world energetically and who I show up to be in the world of myself and in the world of others. And when I meet people and I see people having people out loud will tell you who they are and what they're afraid of and the way they see the world. And in that moment, you just see that, wow, that's that person's life. Like that, their whole life is like that. And you just see where there's no love and you see where there's judgment and you see where there's fear. And then you realize that the judgments that people make of others is the judgments they have of themselves. And in that moment, you're like, well, what would I need? And it's just like, shit, they just need love. They're just, in that moment, there is no love for themselves there. And so if you think about it, if something happens in the world and I wouldn't forgive myself, why the hell would I forgive you? There is no chance I'm forgiving you if I won't forgive me for that. So in that moment, you realize that even things like forgiveness is an act of love, where sometimes just choosing to forgive someone and when they won't forgive themselves is a way to help them reconnect with themselves. So I probably answered many questions in there, but that's who I am. Yeah.
No. And through this conversation, I'm also realizing that there might be people who might not understand a lot of things like to this level, right? So I'll try to break it down. A lot of questions have come up when I have noticed people when I've worked with them. Okay. So the first one that is coming up for me deep within my heart is I've noticed two kinds of people. Okay. Let me even say this, most people, they don't know what it means to be loving all parts of themselves. They don't know what it means. Okay. And even for some, especially men, when I say, I've never said that aloud, just as a direct thing, but even as an indirect thing, when I say, oh, I don't think you love all parts of yourself, they're like, what do you mean? Is one answer. Or The second answer is no, I do like myself. I'm quite confident I do like myself. And so 99% of the people who we are speaking to, they don't know what it means to be loving all parts of themselves. So what does it mean? Can you explain?
So I'm going to challenge you on a couple of things you've said here. And it's probably going to open more tabs than it will close, but that's my nature. That's my style. So there's a concept that I suppose I'm about, which is you're already enlightened. You just choose not to be.
Exactly.
Right? You already love yourself. You just choose not to. It's very important to catch when we talk about when you don't love yourself. You do love yourself. It's this very binary. It's part of the binary. It's part of all the binary nature of being human, to compare everything and to put it into a bucket of right and wrong. A better way that I like to look at this is that you do love you. You love the whole of you, and you forget to.
Mm.
And in these moments, sometimes you genuinely do love yourself, and then sometimes you'll forget.
Yeah.
And then what do? And then you can either beat yourself up, and then someone comes along and reminds you. And so I look at the human experience as just a process of remembering and forgetting. You're born and you're connected to the divine wisdom of the universe, and then you proceed to forget. And the longer you're out of the womb, the more disconnected you get. You've got all this information coming from all the different angles, trying to help you forget. And then something happens, and then you remember, and then you forget, and then you remember, and you forget. And probably the epitome of a perfect human experience is, I don't know, maybe one day you remember a little longer than you forget. And that's it, right? So when you think about when you're trying to address someone from a point of view of them not loving themselves, what you may be perceiving in that moment is you believe or you feel or experience that they've forgotten something about themselves. And usually how that manifests is judgment or fear or an egoic reaction or self-preservation or whatever like that. And self-preservation in the sense of social self-preservation, not physical necessarily, but looking good and defending yourself and trying to be strategic and that sort of thing. I would say that when I've confronted people on this and said, they think, so you don't think I love myself? I had this conversation every day, but I had one specifically yesterday. So you don't think I love myself? And I said, well, I think you can, but you choose not to. And you choose not to more often than you do. And she's like, but I do love myself. And I said, what do you think self-love means? And she's like, I do like myself. And I do think I'm a good person. And I don't hurt people. And I respect myself. And I go to the gym and whatever like that. And I went, yeah. And those are in the realm of loving yourself. You do love some parts of yourself. I said, but okay, you're someone who values holding safety for people, as in you believe you're a safe person. Yeah. And she's, yeah, I like to really, I'm very empathetic. I care greatly about people's safety and that they can share anything with me. Okay. And I'm someone who anyone can talk to and they won't be judged. Fantastic. Okay. So when, not if, when you choose not to do that, either unintentionally, so you do something and someone's, I feel really unsafe with you, and you're like, oh my God. Or sometimes you do it intentionally because maybe you're angry. Yeah. And you're like, fuck you. Because you know how to hold safe space, you also know how to make it dangerous. In those times in your life when you choose to do that, for whatever reason, accidentally or intentionally, and you effectively, in your mind, betray everything you stand for and everything you say you're about, do you love you anyway? Do you still like you anyway? Do you forgive you with love? And are you able to look at that situation and go, yeah, I chose that. And it didn't help me fulfill on what I was there to fulfill on. And I still love me for choosing that. It wasn't what I'm committed to. And I'm still alive, so I get to try again. And maybe I'll reach out. Maybe I'll apologize. Maybe I'll show up differently next time for the next time that happens. But that love for self-love, it's a paradox. One of the things you hear a lot in the world with people talk about empowerment. People talk about passion. People talk about these big positive kind of concepts, and they go out like, I just want to empower people. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Why? People are disempowered and people want to be empowered. And my view is you're one of the people disempowering them. I beg your pardon? No, I'm not. I'm creating safety. No, you believe they're disempowered and that they want to be empowered. So you have to believe that they are disempowered in order to become empowered, that you're helping them do. You already have to believe that they are that way. So you're part of one of the belief systems that disempowers people.
Mm.
As opposed to if you said, oh, no, you're empowered. You just sometimes choose to forget that you are.
Yeah.
That's a very different approach. And in that approach, the most loving question you can say is, so why do you sometimes choose to forget that? Sometimes I get scared. Yeah. When I get scared, I sometimes forget too. And it's less about what are you and aren't you? And it's more about that you are all of it. You are forgetful and you remember. You are disempowered and you are empowered. And
Yeah.
see, because the thing is, if you as someone go through life and you say, I want to be enough. Oh, I just want to be enough. You're deciding that you're not enough.
Exactly.
And your life will bounce through from experience to experience of enoughness, little moments of enoughness, which means, I don't know, you're enough here, you're enough there. Next Wednesday, you'll be enough. Three weeks from now, something will happen and you'll feel enough. But every other moment in between then, you're experiencing not enoughness. And then you're feeling disempowered and angry about your not enoughness. And you're the one creating it. So it's very important, I think, to catch in these moments around things like self-love. And it's a detail at a level of rigor, but it's also to speak to the fact that everyone who listens to this, Shruti, everyone understands what I'm saying and what you're saying. They sometimes just choose not to. When you hold that context of people, it's very different now. You see the best in people and you understand and have compassion for when they sometimes forget. And they may sit there and go, I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. That's okay. And you think about when you did that, when you've done that, even in our calls, and it's just like, oh, you're just scared. That's fine. And there's no judgment for that because I get it. I've been that way too. I've done the same and I've had all my logic salad and all the justifications in the data. And I've read this book and it's like, okay, great. And when I look at my interactions with people who were not there to attack me, they were just reminding me of something I've forgotten. But the rigor was I didn't want to remember in that moment. I didn't feel ready to remember.
Yeah.
And maybe in that moment, the remembering was scary. It was just overwhelming. I just don't know if I can survive that. And so this is when you start to soften things a little bit, I think. When things like self-love come up, yeah, look, I've absolutely
It
been a
is
bull in a
very
china
triggering.
shop.
It is very
Yeah,
triggering to a lot of people. And I know how triggered I got so many times during our calls
yeah, yeah.
because I just wasn't ready. Like, even again, I know this will trigger a lot of people who are listening. Okay.
Beautiful. Good.
Yes, exactly.
Triggers are not wrong. They're not bad until you make
Exactly.
them bad.
Yeah, exactly. So even when we spoke about people who have forgiving people who have hurt us, right?
Yeah.
Forgiving people who have done bad things. And for a long time, it wasn't long. I'm progressing much faster in terms of human timeline. But for me, it just seemed long. But anyways, I was in a limbo. I was like, okay, so if I'm forgiving the people who have done bad things, does it mean that I stand up for that bad things? Does it mean that I'm supporting bad things? And even like with me, so if I'm saying that, oh, I'm forgiving myself for missing a meeting, or if I'm forgiving myself for not standing up when I was supposed to stand up, am I saying it's okay to do it? And I was in that limbo for a long time until I understood the nuance. And again, it shifted something very deeply in me, which I'm sure a lot of people who are hearing you will go through. So I know that you know that nuance. What is it?
One of the things that I find with a lot of people, such as yourself, talk about is this idea of impact for others and on the world, and maybe for themselves, and transformation.
Yeah.
And there is some rigor to be had around the conversation around transformation. What is it really? Everyone loves the idea. It's interchangeably used for the word change, but change and transformation are not the same thing at all. So when people talk about wanting to make an impact, big impact, change the world, make a dent in the universe, whatever it might be, the motive itself doesn't really matter. Great. So you want to show up and you want to cause some sort of dramatic, subtle, whatever change in the world that you think will be lasting. So when you sit there and go, okay, what does that mean? You'd say an impact is something that should be, let's just say, positive. Because I could come over and burn your house down. That's an impact. Made a big impact on your life. You might go, but that's negative. I don't like that. Okay, great. So when people talk about these kinds of things, what they're looking for is a positive impact. What they're looking for is also an impact that's enduring, that lasts, not just temporary, not just lasts a week or whatever.
Exactly.
And they want something ideally that's transferable. And the transferable means that when I show up in your world and I wish to impact you positively in an enduring way, that at some point you take it on for yourself. And I'm not the source of that change all the time. That's teaching a man or a woman to fish. So change is the beginning for transformation. But change is not transformation, and change does not guarantee it either. So if you think about going to the gym, you may need to change some things. You may need to force. So a best way to think about change is force, right? It's very much the masculine kind of energy. It's forcing things, force yourself to get up, force yourself to put your shoes on, force yourself to go to the gym. And it's through that action of work and through that action of focus and discipline and all these masculine things that are revered in the current modern world that we live in, we hope to produce some new result. But the thing is, when people go to the gym, what do they really hope for? They hope for transformation. Because what they actually want is 3-6 months from now, they want the gym to feel easy and they want it to be enjoyable and they don't want it to be a slog. They don't want it to be work. But the way we approach things is constant change, constant force. And I think this is where burnout comes from, which is when people are just exhausted from the force. And it's because you haven't made this enduring, transferable shift, right? Transformation, on the other hand, is flow, right? And in transformation, there's no actual work needed in the sense that the result is produced as a naturally arising consequence. So the naturally arising consequence that comes from this sense of flow is not coming from this like forcing activities that everyone thinks that that's how it works. And as a result, that's why you see some people in life, like, how do you just glide through life and just things manifest and things appear? And they understand a different relationship to how things can be done. And so I think inside this narrative of trying to make a change on other people or make a change for ourselves, there's the question to be answered around what's my role in this and how do I want to approach this? And so I think in a very roundabout kind of way,
There is no other way for us, Pauly.
there's no other way. My personal view, and this is the source of my work, and this is what I believe in, and this is the place this is the hill I'll die on, and this is how I show up. When you say, yes, Pauly, I want transformation. Great. How committed are you? And you're like, I want it. Great. The access to your transformation comes from telling the whole truth. Not just part of it, not the part that makes you look good, not some of it, not the bits that make you feel better about yourself in the moment or just makes it easier. No, the whole truth is not even the whole truth. It's your whole truth. So it's not even the external world about this person made me feel this or this thing happened. It's really getting to a layer where you take full ownership of your feelings, your fears, your inadequacies, your insecurities, your worries and doubts, your choices, full personal responsibility. Now, what's the access to telling the truth? Your triggers. Now, the way that I view your triggers is the triggers are the universe's constant invitation for you to tell the truth. Now, most people will go, I'm triggered. I don't want this. I've got to cut it out. It's toxic, which means they're depriving themselves of an opportunity to be able to tell their whole truth to themselves. You don't owe it to me. I don't owe you my whole truth. I owe me my whole truth, right? So the access to that transformation comes from telling the whole truth, which means when I get triggered, what do I want to choose to do? And I've got a choice between love or fear. The fear will keep me avoiding the trigger and doing everything I can to remove the things that are triggering. Or I can choose to embrace it and go, okay, here's an opportunity to shine a light on my shadow. Here's an opportunity to tell the truth. Here's an opportunity to go, fuck, in all honesty, Shruti, I'm just really shit scared. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm really worried that if you found out, you wouldn't like me anymore. Now you're starting to talk turkey. Now you're starting to really get to the meat and potatoes of what's really going on. And the thing is, you just cannot transform what you will not tell the whole truth around. It just won't happen.
So for most people who are going through this limbo because again, depending on the context and depending on where you're coming from and depending on your experiences, what is good and bad is just so different. It's just labels that we are putting to things, isn't it? So when we are breaking those beliefs of everything that we have learned, when we are breaking when we are peeling the layers, how does this sort of guide us when we are in that limbo state? Because there will be a lot of limbo states. There will be a lot of states where you will be swinging between what you know and what your soul is saying, telling you, or what you're pulled
Yeah.
towards.
So I think what you're probing at here is the core of the work that we did
Exactly.
of observe, love, choose. And in observe, love, choose, it's just a circle, and it's a cycle that we go through, and it's constant. And inside that cycle, the observe is to just observe like a outside observer. There's no judgment. There's nothing to do, fix, change, nothing to edit, add to, remove from. There's just observe, like just observe it. And a lot of the times when we think about self-awareness, people think self-awareness is like a directive. Okay, now you got to do it. It's just, sometimes you can just observe. Oh, wow, I'm sad. And you don't have to do anything about it. You can just observe it. And then observe the judgments that you have around that and why it's wrong and why it's bad. You shouldn't be sad. And how should I be? Like, it's just observe it. And that's where meditation is great. The next stage is love. Love is to love it fully. This is quite difficult for a lot of people because it's gratitude. And a lot of people talk about, yeah, I'm grateful. I've got gratitude. I'm just grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the food in the fridge. And they're the easy things to be grateful for. They're the platitudes. Gratitude is practiced when you didn't get what you want. Practicing the gratitude and love for yourself, as in, can you find the gift in you not being important? Can you find the gift in you being rejected? Can you find the gift in you not being good enough for that job? Can you find the gift in that, in the real, like the thing you're trying everything you can to avoid? Can you find the gift in you not being safe for someone? As someone who's so proud of being safe. Oh, yeah. And when I say the love, it's think of something in your life that you adore, like you just love it. You feel it through your body. You would die for this. You just are moved to tears. So when you experience that as love, will you and can you experience that same feeling all through you for the thing that just happened to you that you say you hate so much? Now that can be really tough. And all the judgments and why should I have to and whatever. And it's because so long as you won't, it will always carry a charge. It will always be this very strong force within you, and you add it to the many list of things in your life that you're trying to move closer to and further away from, which is where the suffering is. And so I think the specifics here, this is not about being, like you said before, it's not about endorsing these things. It's not even saying that you liked it. It's like in our relationship, right? Like you didn't have to like the question for the answer to be right. And then at some point, as you choose to find the gift in this horrible thing that you say that is just the worst thing ever and you couldn't do it, then you look at the choices. What choice do you want to make?
Yeah.
Oh, I just don't have any choices. What choices have I got? I don't know. You tell me. They're your choices. And people often tell you what their choices are. And that's all I got. And that's the only choice you got. Yeah, cool. So let me ask you this. What's the choice you would never make? What's the choice you can't make? What's the choice you shouldn't make? What's the choice you definitely would just no, write them out. Cool. And then you actually inspect the choices that people won't make. You actually look for the theme. And because what would happen if you did make that choice? And what would happen if you did make that choice? And what happened if you made that choice? And then you start to actually discover the triggers. You start to actually unpack and discover what is running them around then this and then this. And so it seems to me here that you're deeply concerned about being alone and disconnected because all of these reasons you wouldn't make these choices would be something that you think would damage a relationship. Okay, great. But then the thing is, you have this one particular choice that you feel like you can make. And whose relationship does that damage? Not that's the one that works for everyone. Yeah, but what about the relationship to yourself? Oh, yeah, right? And so at some point, it's not designed to do anything with other than just go, cool. Now, what happens is you make that choice and you have all the judgment, we'll observe it. And you're like, okay, observe it. And then you love it. What's the gift in being alone? What's the gift in not being loved? And it's just that cycle. And the idea of the observe, love, choose is that's it. That's all there is. And the game, I suppose, or the whatever it is, it's just speed and quality. How fast can you go put yourself through that process? And at what quality? So much so that if I look at myself and I look at people like yourself, as time goes by, it's like anything. Yeah, the gym for the first month sucks, but it gets easier and easier until one day you almost can't do it. Like you almost can't not do it, if that makes sense. Like you're so automatic at it now, like anything you do, it's just a practice like any other practice. So if you wake up every day and tell yourself that you're a piece of shit, that's your practice. So you'll get really good at that.
Yeah.
And so when someone comes along and says, no, Shruti, you're amazing. Nah, I'm a piece of shit. And you're like, oh. And so it's no different. So the choice is, if you can practice putting a donut in your mouth, or you can practice putting in a carrot, or you can practice saying that I'm a piece of shit, or I can practice saying that I'm not. You can practice observe, love, choose.
You know what boggles my mind in all
What's
of
that?
this? Oh my gosh. Oh, I did multiple observe, love, choose, even when you were speaking. Like it was
There you
just
go.
automatic. It was like, I remember talking to you 2 years back. I think that's the first time that we met.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having a headache after our call because I just couldn't cope up with the depth of the conversation. Okay. And for a minute, I was like, is the conversation going too deep? What if people don't understand? What if people don't get it? Should I tone it down? And I was judging myself for that. And I realized that, oh, then I'm assuming that people need the conversation toned down
Yeah.
and they cannot understand the depth that we are going into.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
immediately chose. And then the next time I was like, shit, like I was processing everything that you were saying. And I was like, I was judging myself for the parallel conversation in my head. And I was like, and I immediately loved it. I immediately chose. And it was like my whole body just calmed down in a second. And I immediately, like all this happened in a span of seconds.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's the
mind-boggling.
power of the practice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As someone who has been through the practice, who has improved, so I won't say I've come to the other side, but who's improving every day and knows the worth of falling in love with all parts of yourself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important? Why should people love themselves completely and wholly? Why is it important? I don't want to say what are they missing out, because it seems like they will miss out if they don't do it. That's not the point. But why?
There's a couple of things in what you said. I have to clean them up. Um, First of all, there's nowhere to get. There's no other side. Just remember that. Where you
Yeah.
are is exactly where you need to be. There's nowhere to get. It's like life is not here to be conquered. It's here to be lived, and you're living it. So just remember that.
Yeah.
As someone who loves myself, I also hate myself. And it's the reminder that our capacity for love is also mirrored by our capacity for hate. Some of the angriest people out there are the most disconnected from love, which shows the depth of their capacity for love. So the reminder is that as we navigate this thing, I think, what is the importance of this, you ask? And if I put it in the context of me and my life, look, there's obviously features, advantages, and benefits. You can take down that path and go, you'll get this and 10x of that. You can be more
Yeah.
productive there and better that.
Not that.
One of the things that I experience so much in people is the life they've decided they can never have. And this isn't about money. This isn't about power. This is about peace. This is about love. This is about a sense of connection. This is about healing that relationship and feeling better about and being happy again, or joy, like having fun again in their life. Like, these are things that extend beyond the material world. These are just experiences of life that they're going to have. I just never feel like I'm going to heal that wound. I'm never going to be whole again. I'm never just going to be happy. So many of these ailments are self-fulfilling prophecies that we ourselves wake up every day and practice.
Yeah.
And we reinforce all the time. And I suppose the practice that I approach is just trying to offer a disruption to that. You don't become friends with me. You don't work with me. You don't even hang out with me if you don't want to be disrupted. Like, people come into my life, and if they don't want to be disrupted, they see themselves out very quickly.
Yeah.
And the people who want to be disrupted, I'm like, great. That's what I'm here for. I relate to myself as the sun. I wake up in the morning and the sun shines. If you don't want to go out in the sun today, then don't. Some people spend all day in it. Some people will go and get a tan for 10 minutes. That's up to you. And so I think the reminder here is all of us we're all one and we're all connected. And at the same time, where's this horcrux, this fragmented soul in 7 billion bodies. And each one of us has decided to have our own experience and to explore things in our own way. And it's not up to any of us to tell people what their experience of life should be. Therefore, we can recognize where they may be in their relationship to love or connection or pain or suffering. We could offer input, advice along the way and suggest things. Part of the human experience, a huge part of the human experience, is self-determination. It's this idea of, I want to figure it out for me. And I want to experience this thing. And if it means I've got to touch the hot plate 40 times and get third-degree burns, yeah, it's not what I want, but you're the version of me that touches the hot plate 40 times so you can figure out what hot feels like. Now, the question is, if you're not enjoying that and you find yourself stuck in a bit of a loop, a hot plate loop, would you like me to help you with that? And at the end of the day, it's one of the most powerful things that I've learned in this coaching practice and counseling practice and stuff is this concept of dignity of choice. Retaining the dignity of choice for people, letting them have their choice rather than loading it up with a judgment about who they are or not. And so the subtlety, if we're not careful, is that we can plant this seed in people's mind that they're not there yet. And one day you don't love yourself enough yet, and you're not successful. You need to do more of this and less of that. And what if? And I understand the planting the seed of the world of possibility. I mean, it's a very powerful tool in the coaching tool belt to be able to say, I understand your life is this. This is the current place you're at. What would life like be over here? Where I think a lot of coaches come undone is if they're not careful, they can make island A wrong and island B right. And then say, you're only halfway to island B, I'll help you. And it's, I don't know, sometimes some people walk around the park because they just want to walk around the park. They're not there to exercise. They're not there to socialize. They just want to walk around the park. And to the exercise person, they might be judging them like, oh, you're wasting time. You're not here to exercise. So it's very important, I think, just subtly to, when we talk about what is the importance of this work, that's for the person doing the work to decide. And our role is to help them get maybe some clarity around that by asking great questions and actually reconnecting them to the version of them and the whole of them that has chosen to live life this way. And then say, cool. And what other ways could you choose? And what wouldn't you do? And part of this theory of asking people what they wouldn't do isn't to say, there's the work. You can say that is a legitimate thing to do. Or another way, you can sit there and go, oh, and what if you did do that? I don't know, I never thought about it. Or, oh yeah, it'd just be too scary. Okay. And it's just that gentle, subtle way of actually helping people that what you tend to find is in the therapy world, there's a concept called unconditional positive regard. And I appreciate the concept of it, which is you cannot help people you don't like and respect. If someone comes in and they're a coaching client and you already think they're a piece of shit and they're not coachable, they don't get it, like your chances of helping them are pretty much nil. Now, people would say, now it's very important, Shruti, for you to like and respect your clients. Okay, so you know what happens? People get performative and they create and hold a safe space for people. And they put all that, and this is force, this is change, right? I'm going to hold this space and I'm going to be safe and no judgment here. But experientially, energetically, if you're in tune with yourself enough, you're like, fuck, I feel judged as fuck with this person.
Yeah.
There are people out there in the world who may do all the loving actions and you do not experience them as love. And you have another person who does no loving actions and you're like, wow, you're the embodiment of love. And so it's so energetic. And so as you experience this kind of theatrical version of love, I call unconditional positive regard intellectual love. It's where I come in and I intellectualize loving you as opposed to loving you. That's it. Yeah, but you got to understand what. Why won't you love them? Why won't you love them anyway? Because their behavior is this, or they think that, or whatever. And it's this thing about, oh, they've got so much potential and they're going to waste it. There we go. And that's now, that trigger is telling a part of you and your whole truth. So where in you do you fear not realizing your own potential that you're now projecting onto other people? That's what their life purpose should be. That their life purpose should be your life purpose. And then a deeper cut of that is, when did you decide that you weren't already living your purpose? And who then decided that you even have a purpose and that you even need a purpose?
Yeah.
So these deeper inspections of self get glossed over because everyone's so busy trying to be safe for everyone else, while not realizing that their concept of safety is intellectual. So the reason I'm just saying that is because as we try to help people figure out what these benefits are and what are these advantages and why it's important to help people go through this work, I have my own biases. I have my own projections. I have my own experience of this work. And I will tell
Okay.
people, look, in my experience, having done
Yeah.
this work, I've been able to create experiences in my life that just naturally arise, and they're easy and they're beautiful and they're simple, and develop these deep relationships that are just so meaningful and so rich that you could pinch me, and the life that I have and the relationships I have, which 99.9% of people on the planet would insist are not possible, not probable, and if it did happen, it's pure luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and
Before
my
they say
life,
that, the first thing is judgment.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then that's just the fear. That's just their fear of their own not enoughness.
No. Adding on to, if I can even, my, and I'm just sharing my experience of the journey. Something that I've realized is there is no, and again, that's the paradox. I am an extremely ambitious person. I'm an extremely driven person. You know that. But at the same time, I've come to realize that there is no purpose. There's nothing called purpose. For me, it has turned into there is only now. There is only now. And it's there is no A and B. And there is no, as you mentioned, there is no start and finish. There is no journey. There are just moments in time that we are living. And understanding that intellectually is so different from living it. Because I have finally remembered how to, I've finally remembered experiencing all emotions and loving them. Even if I'm angry, even if I'm hurt, I might be bawling my eyes out, but I've come to love that experience. I might, like, my fingers, my hands and legs might be trembling with anger, but I've come to love it. It's very different. All my life, and somehow this is with all my clients, when I ask them, have you ever felt happiness? Most of them say no. Or they say that I have forgotten what it feels like. Most of them know what peace is, but they don't know what happiness is. And I was in that phase for very long. And through my practice, I've remembered being happy again. And I've realized that I was always happy. I just did not want to accept that I was happy, which is weird, right? And when others there was a part of my healing journey where I had ego associated with my healing journey. I was like, oh, I'm healing. Oh, I'm better because I'm in my healing journey. And when I saw others, people in my family or my friends, I used to be like, oh, I know what you're doing. I know why you're doing it. And because I knew why they were doing it, I was like, oh, I know why you're doing it. And I tried to help them to get them out of that phase. And if I could not do it, I would just get very frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now I'm like, there is a true understanding of everyone is in their own journey because they're supposed to be. They are supposed to be who they are in that moment of time. There's nothing to be
Mm-hmm.
fixed. There's nowhere to go. There is, yeah. And when I initially came to this realization, my mind was like, okay, so now what? Right? So now what? You're just going to sit here with nothing to do? And I'm like, no, that's not the point. And that's the paradox of it, at least in my experience. I have never been more driven, but it's not because I want to create an impact in the world or something. Like I have no goals of, oh, I need to impact like half of the world. I want to become the best coach and guide and healer in the world. Or I see 500 people in front of me being impacted by what I have to say. It's nothing like that. It's just pure joy. Like even when I'm doing something as small as writing a LinkedIn post, it's just pure joy. That's it. Nothing else. I'm not even thinking further than that. And that is so liberating. It's like a weight has fallen off my shoulders. Weirdly, when I had this transformation, I lost 4 kgs. Okay, did nothing. And I was like, it's like my physical being was so awed by the whole thing. And it was like, that's so cool. That's so fucking cool. And my soul was just there with this small smile on her face, saying, it was just like, and I could feel that. I could feel my soul's expressions. Anyways, yeah, it's mind boggling, at least to my physical self.
One of the things that disempowers a lot of people is the belief that they don't have many choices and enough options. Like, well, what else am I to do? I'm screwed, or I can't afford it, or I can't do this.
But that's the point, isn't it? Like even the point of choice, even the thing of, for a lot of people, and please correct me if I'm wrong, even the thing of choosing and choice comes from ego a bit, isn't it? Because when you truly surrender, there is, okay, please explain this to me, okay? Where does surrender and choosing, like how do they intermix together? I know I'm opening a whole new can.
Yeah, that's okay. It's good. It's great. It's great.
With surrender coming into the picture, but please do. And what is surrender for people who don't understand? Because for me, it's a feeling and I haven't been able to put words to it yet. Because when you let go of ego, it's also truly letting go of control, which scares a lot of them. But
so I think
also
some
sort of necessary.
Yeah. So I think let's have a conversation about choice. So many people perceive that they don't have many choices. And choosing to believe you don't have many choices is paradoxically a choice. So what is choice and decision and that kind of stuff? And decision is the process of elimination, but choices comes from this infinite. You can choose anything. So when you think about the paradox of choice, which is often used in marketing and stuff like that, if you have too many options in your catalog type thing, people get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So what a paradox to have, right? That people are unhappy that they don't have enough choice. And then when given unlimited choice, they're unhappy that they have too much choice. And so, well, which one do you want? I just want the right amount of choice. What's the right amount of choice? You know what I mean? 3 or 5, or just help me choose. Help you choose. Okay. So this is when you start getting into the parameters of what's informing the choice. Now, ego and identity can be some of the things informing the choice. And it's, if you look at the concept of ego, I break it down into 3 parts. I know, but there are other people that do it differently. I have the desperate identity, the fearful identity, and the loving identity. So ego unto itself is not wrong. It's not bad. It's a beautiful thing to
Yeah.
have. And we all have one, and you'll probably never be without one, to be honest. You'll always be an ego of something. And the ego, I know most people use it in the context of egotistical, arrogant, prideful, that kind of stuff. But if you think about your desperate identity, that's addictive behavior. And that is when people will do anything to survive, anything to look good, hog the microphone, punch another person, do whatever it takes to protect this identity that is desperately under threat. The fearful identity, which I think is what most people refer to as ego, is the identity of you that you believe is not about to survive, and you need to do whatever you can to protect it. It's not maybe as aggressive as the addictive ego, but it's certainly up there. And it tends to be a little bit more enduring. So maybe you'd call that your identity around like pretending you're someone you're not. And that's just that fear of, because what would happen if people found out the truth, right? So I find that the fearful identity is more of an enduring thing, whereas the addictive identity is more outburst related. It's more like circumstantial. The loving identity, however, is the version, it's your ego that you love and loves you. That might be that you're Indian and you're Hindi and you're a wife. And this is identity. These are all part of your ego, right? But they're parts that you feel good about, and they're parts that so what makes the difference between these things? One would argue that I didn't choose my outburst. I didn't choose my fear, but you did. But those choices seemed out of survival. Whereas the choice to be a wife was maybe could have been out of survival as well, right? Or it could have been out of love, right? Now you might say that I didn't choose to be a woman, I didn't choose to be Hindi. Well, you did. You may not be aware of it and how, which is a different conversation, but you did. And so what you tend to find as you explore these things, and even if you say that you chose to be a woman, how could you? It's great. What you're showing me right now is your discomfort and your real fear of choice. And yet at the same time, you want more choice, but you
That's
can't
a
handle the
paradox.
choices you got. You can't handle the choices you got. Now, the question is, what is actually going on with choice? Like, why is it scary? What if I make the wrong choice?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen if you do? And what happens if you make that choice? And the catastrophe starts. And then there's the worst case scenarios and this and this. And you know what? This is where people go, in order for me to make a choice, I need some guidelines. And let's call those guidelines boundaries. I need boundaries for my choices. Okay, great. So what are your boundaries protecting you from? You, your own not enoughness, your own insignificance, your own inability to face your own not enoughness. So imagine boundaries, let's say choice was the idea that we both chose to ride a bike. We're both not very good at it. And so we chose as boundaries to put training wheels on, because that helps us navigate the choices of being able to ride the bike and not falling off. Now, you ride your bike on the weekends. I ride my bike every day. So 3 months later, I take my training wheels off because I can ride the bike. And you're like, you're a lunatic, right? And you're projecting what I'm doing based on your view of the world, based on your experience of the choices. So it doesn't occur as a choice to you to take the training wheels off, because that's a choice you will die. And then you call it a boundary. But I look at it, and then you might say to me, you have no boundaries. I do have boundaries. They're just different from yours. And inside my boundaries, I don't believe I'm going to die. I'm okay. So as a result, as we level up and skill up, even in this self-mastery journey, yeah, we can take on bigger challenges and not get fucked up over it. And we can have harder conversations, and we can be calmer under pressure, because the muscle we've developed is we got on the bike every day.
Yeah.
Rather than once a week. And so as a result, what the naturally arising consequence is, these boundaries actually fall away. Now, to a very scared person, that's insane. Like, why would you do that? Because it's all under the assumption that you won't survive. So the choices that we make are going to be informed by our relationship to ourselves and the thing we're making the choice about. But ultimately, the choice is going to be informed. The worst case scenario, I think, for a human being is not physical death. It's physically surviving and not surviving it emotionally and psychologically. Like, I just couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, the humiliation. So much so that people then do actually physically kill themselves. So the physical death in itself, and you hear it, I watch the various videos, and not because I'm ghoulish, you just see the stuff of where there was a video the other day of a police officer in the United States, and he was under attack, and you could hear in his voice, he genuinely thought he was going to die. Like, his tone was so different from someone who's in a situation where they think they're going to socially die. So the
I
context in
think
which he
socially
responded,
dying is more scary for a
Mm.
lot of people than
yeah,
actually dying. But the thing is, most people don't know that's what they are scared of.
this is the concept of ego death. Because
Exactly.
everyone loves this idea of ego death. And you go, no, I'm not about ego death. I'm about ego bankruptcy.
Mm,
Well, what's the
yeah,
difference? Bankruptcy. And you're there
exactly.
and everyone can see you with, selling all your stuff being taken away from you with, now sitting in the gutter. And that's how a life is actually lived. We get bankrupted. We don't always die.
Yeah.
And so one of the big challenges is as we go to make these choices, what occurs to us as an available choice is going to be informed by our belief around whether we're going to survive the bankruptcy or not.
Mm.
And so the question is, well, what's your practice to help you survive the bankruptcy? If your practice is to avoid, reject things, cut things out, toxic, narcissistic, this, blah, 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 it's what you're teaching yourself is when that inevitable fall comes, you're fucked. Like you just have no muscle, no practice, nothing. Like you just have nothing saved up, that you have nothing. And it's this sort of belief and hope that it will never happen. So when you were saying before about what to do with these things and having no purpose, my experience of a lot of people who intellectualize this work is that they believe what we are talking about is nihilism. That life's empty and meaningless. What's the point? There's no point. No, this isn't nihilism. This is you've created a space in your life where you have a blank piece of paper and now you can draw whatever you like without any meaning attached to it. And you can attach meaning to it. You're allowed to. This work is not about having no meaning and having no significance, having no
Exactly.
ego. I have a fucking ego, but I choose it. And if that ego doesn't work, then I choose a different one. Right? I'm not beholden and stuck in this identity now that in for a penny, in for a pound, that's who I am, and I can't ever change.
Yeah.
Because I can change whenever I choose to. And like you said before, you can choose to change in 20 minutes if you want to.
Yeah.
Which you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it. And then you're suddenly like, fuck, it only took me 20 minutes. Why did I take 20 years on this other thing? And I'm like, I don't know. Why did? The thing is, and inside of that's also the forgiveness, where the judgment then shows up for like why you didn't forgive yourself in 20 years. It's just all of that. And so part of this concept of choice, and this is what I'm really hearing what you're saying, the conscious choice, is to be able to choose it from a space of nor love nor fear. In the neutrality, you can choose it from love, you can choose it from fear, right? And so this is the thing, if you think about yin and yang, most people think of yin and yang, black and white. And what they fail to recognize is yin, there's yang, and then there's yin and yang. There's black and there's white, and then there's the black and white. And it's that symbiotic relationship in actually containing and holding both that is actually where that's the whole of life. And so when you think about making a whole choice for the whole of you, if you talk about honoring your whole self and making a conscious choice, the better you can check in with the whole of you and consciously choose the meaning you want to attach, consciously choose the game you're willing to play, consciously choose the context you wish to hold, consciously choose the consequences you'll face. To make any choice is to choose to suffer. Because if I'm going to choose to be on this call with you right now and record a podcast, then I can't be doing something else. Now, the question is, am I disempowered by that choice? Am I angry about that choice? Am I lying about this choice? Am I wishing I was doing this other thing, but now we're talking about where the choice is no longer conscious. And now we're talking about the sense of obligation and duty and resentment and annoyment. It's because, there is a judgment of the choices you make as opposed to this lightness. And so when you, for instance, you choose to feel joy, great. That's it. Or you just choose that. Yep. Now, you will not be able to just choose it so long as what's informing all your choices are all these things you're desperately holding on to, trying to protect, trying to grasp onto, trying to avoid giving up. And so then that's the work. And then it's okay, cool. If you want to be able to make choices more freely and change your mind whenever you want, be okay with it. And ironically, the world will also be okay with it. That's the crazy thing that people don't get.
Exactly.
As we move through this, the world responds like, oh, okay. Like this big catastrophe you think is going to happen actually never happens. That's crazy. But if you try to tell people that, they're like, oh, I'm sure, yes, some magical land where, and you're like, cool, they're not ready. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And when they're ready, I'll let them know.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm hearing inside of that. I'm hearing everything you're sharing with me is the conscious choice to be joyful. And for no other reason, not because here's the rigor. People go, I'm consciously choosing this. Okay, what happens if you don't? Oh, then I'd be a shitty person, bad parent, bad coach. So it's not chosen from love. And it's not chosen from a space of nothing. It's chosen with the subtle judgment, the subtle like, and if I didn't do that, then I'd be a horrible person. I'd never forgive myself. And so then that comes back to the self-love piece, which is why won't you love you if you're not safe? Why won't you love? I mean, okay, you say, I want to choose from a space of joy. What's the opposite of joy for you? What is the opposite of joy for you?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't have an opposite. Probably in normal terms, probably fear.
Okay, so let's just say that
Assume.
for the
Yeah.
use of this exercise. And if in a moment you notice yourself observing fear and not joy,
Mm-hmm.
do you believe you have a choice? Or do you believe, fuck, what else can I do? This is all I got. I do get to choose joy. I'm just choosing fear right now. I can love the whole of me that is choosing to be afraid.
Yeah.
And
Or I can choose fear and love it. Either ways.
love is fear.
Mm.
That's it. Love is fear. It's the same coin.
Yeah.
Love is fear and fear is love.
Yeah.
It's the same feeling.
Yeah.
It's the same feeling.
And what boggled my mind was as we were talking about our emotional deaths, and as we were talking about, we usually never emotionally die, but we fear emotional death. What happens is emotional bankruptcy with your pants down, right?
Yeah. Everyone's laughing.
Yeah. I realize that there is the confidence that I've gained that I'll be okay. The fear has completely vanished, even from the emotional bankruptcy. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck anymore. I just don't.
Isn't it
And not in a
interesting
bad
that
way. It just is. There's no good or bad associated with it. I'm like, I'll be okay. I'll be fine. I'll get up. I'll just move on. And when you fear something, okay, even if it's subconscious, even if you're not aware of it yet, it has this immense power over you, isn't it? And when you realize that, and when that power fades away, it doesn't go in one day, but when the power fades away, you just look back and you're like, oh, the power has faded away. And knowing me now, I'm like, I would probably I know I will love the experience of that emotional bankruptcy too. Yeah. And Polly, talking to you through this conversation, it's made me realize, because every day you're just doing the reps,
yeah, that's all
right?
it is.
Yeah, you're just doing the reps and going on from one day to another. Universe puts people and opportunities in your way, in your path, to test you during the reps, and you test you or aid you or whatever it's meant to be. And you just keep going. And you don't realize, again, this is the paradox, right? It's not a path, it's not a journey, but it is still a path and a journey. And as you're going on this paradoxical path, right?
Yep.
And you're like, oh, wow, I've come quite far. And the best realization out of all of this is that there was a time when I always wanted to be a future version of Shruti and had painted her and had imagined her in my mind. And I was like, I want to be her. I want to be her. And that version doesn't exist anymore because I am her. And that version doesn't exist. There is no future version of Shruti. There is no past version of Shruti that I was angry with, that I judged, that I hated. There's just me. And that has become so much that even when I try to imagine a future version or a past version of me, I feel so much disconnect with them. Like even when I do force to imagine a those versions, I feel such intense disconnect that it doesn't make sense to me anymore. And yeah, it's mind-boggling. I don't know if people who are listening to our conversation can understand what I'm saying, but who the fuck cares? But
Of course they do. Of course they do. The only reason they'll choose not to is because it'll be scary. Because it will trigger in them where they don't listen to themselves and where they're not aligned.
Yeah.
And the future version of them that they still aspire to be, and the present version of them that they hate, and the past version of them they'll never forgive. That's a little trigger. When people go, oh, this is all weird, mumbo jumbo, doesn't make any sense. It's like when people start talking about money and they start yawning. It's just a physiological response to this is overwhelming and I don't know how to do it. So it's a great clue that when people do respond that way, rather than go, oh, they don't get it, they're not ready, which you can say, you can do. You can also use that as an opportunity to go, okay, what would they need? What would activation look like for them? Knowing where they're at. And that could be the reframe. It could be a different tone. It could be a different person, a different situation. Power of metaphors. This is the power of relationship when you get to know people and being able to frame things in ways that make more sense to them. I think what happens is as you navigate where people's readiness is, this is something I've been mapping out for myself.
Yeah.
And
that's actually one of the next questions I wanted to ask you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. What's the question?
As I'm talking to more and more people, as I'm working with more and more people, I'm realizing it's not like people are in different parts of the path. Like they are not in point A, point B, point C. It's not that. It becomes about how ready are they to remember.
Yep.
And how it's almost like a rubber band, right? You keep pulling, and then at one time there's a tensile, I don't know what it's called, like tensile strength, and you just leave it and it bounces back to the source. That's the image that comes to my mind. So it becomes, and sometimes people don't even realize that they are ready to remember.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that for people who are ready to remember, this conversation becomes like a light that guides them. But my question was more about, so if there are people who are close to being ready to remember or choose to remember, who are ready to remember, how can they go the last couple of steps? It's not something that they should do. I'm not talking steps as in terms of actions or anything, but how can they strengthen the muscle, so to speak?
You're going to hate my answer.
I know I will. Okay.
Observe,
And
love,
I
choose.
know what it is going to be also, but I'm still asking it.
It's
Because
observe, love, choose. Observe the trigger. Tell the whole truth. Tell the whole truth. You can't be grateful what you won't tell the whole truth about. Like you're just not. So in observe, love, choose, it's just great. You got triggered. Now what? But you forgot. Now what? You beat yourself up. Do you defend yourself? Do you justify and explain? Just even observe that you're doing that. Oh, wow, I'm really justifying myself a lot. People will give you feedback, particularly people who love you, people who believe in you. They'll say, hey, you don't have to be defensive. Rather than go, I'm not being defensive. Observe it. Oh, am I defensive right now? And you don't have to take the judgment on board.
Yeah.
But you can observe the judgment and go, oh, am I defensive? Just check in.
Yeah. And when working with you, I had 5, 6 sticky notes throughout my house with just observe, love, choose, and mind, body, soul written in it.
Yeah.
Because those 2 exercises, and those 2 exercises were literally drilled in my mind because of you every single day. For people to know the context. Like when working every day, Pauly had initiated me to an app, and every day I would have to answer the question of what did your observe love choose today? Did you listen to your mind, body, soul today? What did your mind say? What did your body say? And what did your soul say? And I think the best part was these two exercises really integrated well with each other. And if I know you've explained the observe, love, choose, but if you could explain the mind, body, soul too.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is like the passing the mic exercise that we used to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
So if you imagine this is a boardroom, you're a boardroom and you've got your mind, your body, and soul. There's three different people. The mind is clearly the noisiest person in the room, demanding all the attention and hogging the whiteboard. And as you do these meditations, and a lot of people try to get out of their mind, which is a subtle judgment that the mind is wrong and we shouldn't be in the mind. I need to be in this other place. And so meditation is really hard because it's so performative and it's controlling and whatever. And so part of meditation, at least for me, is just to be able to observe, love, choose. And it's to be able to notice what shows up and notice the lawnmower outside and notice that I'm uncomfortable and whatever. The function of noticing those things and being with them is actually you being present. You're being fully present in that moment. And so as you notice the judgments, you observe all the thoughts and feelings around, oh God, the guy next door is get let up and oh my God, I got to pay that bill later and whatever. Like that is you actually being present.
Mm.
And so the observation is, oh wow, I'm really in my mind right now. And you just allow yourself to sit down quietly, ask the body and soul to take a minute and just pay attention to your mind. So one of the things I do in the exercise in my meditations and something I've since developed since it's just two hand gestures around like holding and letting go. And as I allow myself to move my energy around my body, I just hold my thoughts and I just look at them all. It's like spreading out a bunch of Legos or something on the table. You just look at it all and you just hold it all and all the things. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Thank you. And I just let it go. And I'm like, cool. Now, what does the body have to say?
Mm.
And then I just check in with my body. And then as I start to feel my body, the pain, the cold, am I hungry? Am I sore? Where's the energy? I hold it again. I just hold in my body. And just observe my breath and observe my fingers and observe just how my body feels and just, oh, this and that, neck's a bit sore and whatever. And just observe that. I don't judge why my neck is sore. I just feel it and then I let it go. And then at some point I let that go. And then I get connected to my soul. And my soul is my connection to love. The quickest way to access your soul is gratitude, bar none. And again, not the grateful, oh, I'm grateful to have a new car and a wonderful boyfriend and whatever. No, gratitude is for the things that you most would usually think you'd never be grateful for, the worst possible things. And this is where you start looking for the gift. And as you start to just be with the feeling of gratitude, the thoughts of gratitude, the connection to gratitude of just what it means to be just like, I couldn't have made a single choice that would be different, that would make it any better than it is. And as you just hold on to that feeling, you hold on to that. And then I just keep passing the mic around and go, thank you, soul. Now, depending on the meditation, the length, you might move it around, but then I notice a thought kicks in. And I just go through that process of just allowing the energy to move through me and realize that these are whole body, mind, body, soul choices. These are whole mind, body, soul experiences. These are whole mind, body, soul feelings and observations and whatever. And by doing that, you start to be able to break down things like your feelings that you think are feelings, but they're actually judgments.
Yeah.
No, I'm feeling this. You're like, no, that's a judgment. That's not a feeling. And you start getting more and more in tune with the feeling. And so then you just go, oh, wow, I just feel sad. And then you start getting better at knowing what you need to support that feeling. And then things like connection to soul, like that feeling of when you actually are able to tune into that more and you practice that muscle, you just practice gratitude. And so something happens, someone cuts you off in traffic and you're like, oh, cool, thanks. You're like, what do you mean, thanks? And it's just, obviously I wasn't supposed to be there right now. And that's okay where I'm at. And what if you're late? I'm late. And I'll be grateful for being late. And I'll forgive myself for being late. And it'll be okay. And if it's not, and then that's when the monkey mind kicks in. But surely, and you just go through that process of just go, cool, thank you, mind. Pass the mic. Now it's not your turn anymore. Now it's the body's turn. Okay, thank you, body. Now it's the soul's turn. And as you just process that, the same thing, the observe, love, choose, you tend to find that when you show up into situations now, you just naturally do that process now. So I'll walk into a situation, I'll notice the judgment and go, okay, I don't like that person. They've got funny teeth or something. And you're like, okay, cool. Thanks, brain. And I even say to myself, thanks, brain. And then I just go, cool, how am I feeling right now? Oh, I'm feeling tense. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling apprehensive about this thing. I just take a deep, okay, what do you need? Take a deep breath. Cool, just relax your body and just take a minute. Just take a minute. Okay, cool. And then reconnect with my soul. Cool. Man, I'm grateful to be here and to have this opportunity to talk to this person. I'm grateful to be able to experience this. I'm grateful to be alive and to be able to show up and try this, even if I fail. And as you just go through that process, you just very quickly, then you return to love like that in no time. And so then when you open your mouth and you show up, there's just a different energy to you. And then people are like, wow, you have beautiful energy. And you're like, yeah, the energy is the alignment. It's not from your brain. It's not from your body, nor is it from your soul. It's the alignment. It's like an instrument. It's a beautiful tone that moves through you because you're aligned and now can move through you and produce that sweet sound that is you. That's it.
I'm just taking it all in. Yeah. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. You were ready to remember. And so I was able to help you. And that's it. I'm grateful for being able to contribute to you. And I'm grateful because you helped me be my best. You helped me be better. You helped me remember to love me when I forgot, even as your coach.
Yeah.
So I'm
You're
grateful
my
for you.
investor.
I am your investor. There's a saying, and I think I remember telling you this, right? You always have the perfect client, and you always have the perfect coach or the perfect teacher. It's the real saying, I think it was like, you always have the perfect teacher and you always have the perfect student.
Mm.
There's no one that's not coachable, and there's no one that's a horrible teacher. The question is, are you willing to be able to sit with the discomfort that may come with something or someone that challenges you? And yeah, you certainly challenged me in ways that I chose to use for growth. So I chose love. I chose to use the challenge from a loving perspective rather than a fearful challenge. And I'm grateful that I was able to support you and help you access and remember a part of who you are, the whole of you. And so that you can now then go and give that to others and help others and support others through that process.
I am just feeling so much happiness and peace now. I have nothing else to say. Just so much gratitude and love. And yeah, just so happy for you, for me, for everyone, as weird as it sounds. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for being there.
Thank you for showing up. It takes a lot of bravery to step into the ring, but it takes a lot of courage to stay there.
Mm.
Bravery is innate. Bravery, you can just impulse your way into that. Courage, you choose it. Courage keeps you in the game. Bravery gets you in it.
Mhm.
Thank you for being courageous.